Have you ever heard of insect politics?
Hello friends, my name is Stevie Cade and welcome to Film Trigger. On this channel, we talk about movies and junk. Yeah, and if you like talking about movies and junk, be sure to hit that subscribe button and a little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So in today's video, I am going to discuss what I like, what I'm on the fence about, and what I don't like with a movie that I consider to be one of the best horror remakes out there. Right on the list with 2013 Evil Dead. Don't agree with me? Discuss it in the comments. Thanks. But the original to this movie came out in 1958, and as good as it was for its time, this movie definitely takes the cake in a horror adaptation. Really harped on the horror part of it. So without further ado, let's dive into my thoughts on The Fly. As you heard me before, I did bring up the original movie, and I'm going to do that a few times in this video. There's not really too much to compare and contrast to, but there are a couple things, so you'll hear me mention it every now and again. So let's dive immediately into what I like about this movie. And I will have to say, one of the best things about this movie, especially in contrast to the original, it kicks into gear right from the get-go. Here's your main characters. Here is what they are about. Here is the introduction to Seth Brundle's science experiment. All right there in the first 15 minutes of the movie. It's fantastic. It really sets things up so you're not spending too much time in character development hell, which I do believe the original movie did do that. It in the sense of it spent a lot of time on character development, like maybe a little too much time, but that's just my opinion. This movie, give me the gore, give me the grossness, and it did. It delivers. Although I do believe there is light sacrifice to the development of the relationship between Seth and Veronica, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. Because for the most part, the lack of character development fits into what this movie is trying to accomplish, which is focusing on the horror aspects of a man turning into a fly, or being spliced with the fly, or fused with the fly, or whatever. And they did that by not holding anything back when it came to the practical effects of making this a horror film. This is what I've come to expect from an 80s horror genre film. It's cringy, it's disturbing, and it showcases the craftsmanship of the practical effects. Like, they're just done so well. And this ties in with the overall set design and cinematography of the movie. The very simple but effective use of lighting complements the overall tone that this movie's going for. And I love the design of the teleportation pods. Like, they look industrial. It reminds me of like a motorcycle engine. That's what they look like to me. And to be honest with you, a little side note here. If you guys remember Fantastic Four by Josh Trank, Four Stick as it's been known to be called, that movie was heavily influenced by The Fly. And watching The Fly, having that knowledge, I could definitely see what Josh Trank was going for. And for fuck's sake, man, I know the guy was a hot mess and got drunk. I would really like to see Josh Trank's version of Fantastic Four, because the studio came in, got involved, and turned that movie all upside down. I'm just going to say right now, hashtag release the Trank cut. Anyway, this movie's not about that. This movie's about The Fly. Jeff Goldblum himself wrote a letter to Vincent Price simply saying something along the lines of, I hope you like this movie as much as I enjoyed yours. And Vincent Price was so touched by this letter that he actually went and saw the movie and responded to Jeff Goldblum by saying, it's wonderful right up to a certain point, but it went a little too far. Well, that's subjective, Vincent Price. I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I think this movie goes just as far as it needs to, and probably in today's age could go even further when it comes to the horror aspect of things. And I think it was a very courageous thing for them to take this movie and turn it into what they did, because it is a far departure from the original. And as I said before, it takes it from thriller to actual horror and, well, slasher, really. I mean, kind of slasher. I mean, we'll get into why it's not really a slasher, but it is, but it isn't, a little bit later. Heck, this movie pushed the envelope so hard, there was an actual scene cut that you can find on YouTube, actually, where Brundle mixes the remaining baboon with a cat that you made, or you made a monkey cat monkey. And then this monstrosity comes from the pod and he beats it with a lead pipe. I don't know why I'm laughing at this. They cut it from the movie simply because the test audience reacted in a way of, Well, they didn't really care about Brundle's story anymore. They're like, okay, well, if this guy dies a horrifying death, we don't no longer feel anything about that because, well, he's a monster. Well, technically and figuratively. Another thing I really enjoyed about this movie was the subtle foreshadowing of Brundle's technology betraying him. That one part when he had the computer chip stuck in his back, to me, this symbolizes a literal adaptation of his technology stabbing him in the back, which is pretty much the relationship he has with his technology in this film.
I want a disc. Give me preliminary integration. I want a disc. Give me preliminary integration. I want a disc. Give me preliminary integration. I want a disc.
I thought it was a good foreshadowing moment. A little hint of things to come. Now, there were plenty of other actors in the talks for this role of Steve Brundle. Well, Steve? Of Seth Brundle. That's weird. Why did I call him Steve? My son's name is Seth. My name is Steve. That's probably why I did it. Anyway, but I'm so happy Jeff Goldblum got the role, because watching this, knowing Jeff Goldblum and how popular he is now and all the movies I've seen him in, watching him in his early years, in the first 15 seconds of this movie, he just Jeff Goldblum's the shit out of it. Everything I've come to know and love about Jeff Goldblum is shown to us right at the beginning of this movie. So good for you, Jeff. Way to stick to your guns, buddy. But his actual performance of transforming into this fly thing, it's beautiful. And it's detailed by his twitching, his scratching, his super exhausting rants, and his meth head-like mannerisms. It illustrates just how uncomfortable Seth Brundle is, even if he doesn't realize it yet. Like, you see, even his mind is so focused on his work, but his body is telling him something's wrong. This is another aspect that the 1958 film, I believe, is missing, because in that movie, we see the fly transition more or less just, his hand claw thing that he keeps in his pocket, and when his face is exposed late in the movie, but for the majority of the movie, his face is covered up by a rag. I don't want to say it was a lack of being able to do it then. It just wasn't something that was done in movies. Like, the horror genre wasn't quite hashed out yet, and slasher hadn't quite come along in the way that it was in the 80s. But then again, we also don't get to hear his dialogue because everything's written down. I never really connected with the scientist in the original movie, but I connect with Brundle in this movie. I can identify his transformation. I can tell he's not acting himself because this is a very heavy film. Everything about it's heavy. We get to watch this very likable character slowly transform into this monster, and also seeing the effects it has on Veronica carrying this monster's baby that was in a very controversial abortion nightmare sequence. Then we go out with a bang. Literally, the movie doesn't end happily. It's not a happy ending at all. And it just ends like that because that story is told. Nail in the coffin, it's done. It just gets heavier as it goes until it is just over. Like, unless the planet just blew up randomly, you probably couldn't get any heavier. Well, you probably could have. Never say never, right? Let's not forget the cat monkey. But everybody's story arc becomes a roller coaster. The protagonist becomes the antagonist. The antagonist becomes the protagonist. Veronica, who's seemingly innocent, also becomes a very questionable character when the discussion of abortion comes up, when she wants this baby ripped out of her body. God, it's a fucking heavy-ass movie. And to me, if you're going to remake a thriller, you need to step up the game, and that's what this movie did. Now, moving right along with a couple of things that I'm on the fence about when it comes to this film. Now, I did mention that I like the fast-paced nature of this movie, how we dive right into the story, we know what's going on, but I also mentioned that there were some sacrifices with certain development. A lot of things just kind of glossed over. The relationship between Seth and Veronica. I buy it enough to feel for them, but I just don't buy it enough to really connect them as a real couple. There's not too much there for me to grab a hold of. I don't feel like they were really too invested. The movie kind of skips over a lot of time without really letting us know, besides just some quick dialogue, oh, it's been 3 months, I've changed so much, or what have you. And then there's the sudden rush of Seth wanting to teleport himself. That was really fast. And again, they did explain it off like, oh, he got drunk, so he decided to teleport himself. Has this guy never had a drink before? It's not such a noticeable thing to take me out of the movie and be like, oh my God, it's fucking ruined now. How are they going to explain that? No, it's not like that at all. But when I'm sitting here watching this movie and studying it, that part where he jumps into the teleporter, like, it's just, oh, okay, I guess we're going there now. Which is fine. That's why I'm on the fence about it. But if I had it my way, I would have liked to have seen him more noticeably upset. Maybe specifically about Veronica. Something to weigh more on his emotions rather than just a drunk decision. Oh, well, I'm kind of upset. All right, let's go moving from there to there. Another thing that falls into this lack of development aspect is not really understanding Seth Brundle's background too much. Yes, we know he's a scientist. Yes, we know he's working for someone or someone's. But in all honesty, he could just be a madman who's just doing this shit in his own time, and we'd have no idea because there actually isn't really any diving deep into where he's getting the funds for this or why he's doing it in his apartment instead of a lab. Now, this was probably a tie-in to the original because the scientist in the original, had his lab in his basement, but it was a lab in his basement. Like, that's where the lab was. But this is, no, here's my fridge, here's my couch, and there's my teleporter. I'm just taking his word for it that he's an established scientist because they don't give us any other reason to believe that. Like Veronica's world, okay, yeah, they dive into that more. She has an ex-boyfriend. We see her at her office, where she does her reporting or what have you. But I would have liked to have seen more of that with Seth Brundle's character development. It really, not for anything more than just to solidify his integrity in the movie for me. All right, moving right along with what I don't like about this movie. And there isn't much I don't like about this. As a matter of fact, I only have one thing on my what I don't like list, and that's the lack of a kill count. As I said before, like, this movie, I guess it's a slasher because it has slasher elements. You see a baboon turned inside out. We see this man turn to a fly. He eats a guy's hand or something. The spit, vomit, leg acid thing. That's gross. Icky. Horror. Awesome. But, like, nobody dies except for the baboon and Brundle himself. So I can't really put this in the slasher category. And in my Thriller Thursday reviews, if applicable, I like to put a murder montage. I can't put a murder montage on here. It'd be like a 1-second murder montage. Okay, here's your murder montage. But another way they could have hashed this out is instead of stopping Brundle in his tracks, when he went out and got that chick at the bar and he had her come in and he was going to put her through the teleporter and Veronica came and pooped on his party. Like, it would have been nice to have at least maybe a 5-minute sequence of him taking multiple people to the teleporter and like it not working out. That would have added just enough flair to make this a slashery type of film. They don't, so it doesn't necessarily fall into the slasher category, even though it feels like it should. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Comments below. Thanks. Because if he did do that, and he did end up killing all these people, at the end of the movie, let's say he did reverse the splicing and he was able to turn human again, he would still have to live with all the murders he committed. That would actually add on to why he would want Veronica to kill him at the end of the movie. Like, I don't know, just a thought, my theory. Do you agree, disagree? Comments below, let me know. Thanks. But also attached to my what I don't like list are my petty points, and these are, well, just me being petty about shit in the movie that I saw. Speaking of the woman that he takes home, why the fuck would she go home with him? He literally just snapped her friend's arm in half. Like, and she's like, oh, okay, this seems safe. Let me go home with you. Talk about not noticing red flags. And another one of my petty points in this movie is, Veronica, you ate a steak that came out of a teleporter that a inside-out baboon was just in just a few hours before. Fucking gross. Overall, if you're looking for a great horror movie with stellar practical effects, you'll find it here in this movie. It's got a good story, fast pacing, it doesn't spend too much time in character development hell, and it tells its story in a very solid form. I personally believe it could have benefited from showing a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, and diving deeper into the slasher elements, but it doesn't take away from what this movie is, which is awesome. I don't think this movie suffers from the lack of that, and it's a great popcorn horror movie. And for all these reasons, I'm giving this movie a B+.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, there you have it, my review for The Fly. I would review The Fly 1958, but all I would say is it's boring. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it. I watched it, and I'm just going to leave it right there in that memory. But let me know what your thoughts of this movie and the other one in the comments below. What grade would you give this and why? I'm very curious, and I really enjoy talking to you down there, so please leave a comment. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos, and as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.
That's disgusting.